Okay, hi everybody. Welcome to the Arts 101 Day for Arts First. And you've probably already been told that what's happening today is you're moving from a few different things on campus to get a picture of what life is going to be like when you come to university. So you just came from a psychology lecture, right? Okay, so what that involved is learning, what's it like to be in that kind of classroom? How do you learn best? What strategies and skills can you use to make the most of that kind of learning environment? Arts First, in a way, is a very, very different kind of a learning environment. So what we're going to do, I'm Heather Smythe. I'm a prof in the English department, and I teach Arts First courses. And?
I'm Ola Idris. I'm a second-year arts and business student, and I took this class last semester, so I'm giving you my experience from it.
Okay, so Ola and I are going to take turns in a moment talking a bit about what Arts First is like and what will happen in your classroom. And then we're going to give you a taste of what it's like to be in the Arts First classroom by giving you a quick assignment, and you're going to get into small groups and work on that, and then we'll take up what you've learned in the process. Okay, so just a couple of things for some background about Arts First. As you probably know, this is a kind of program set up to introduce you to some important things when you first show up at University of Waterloo to start on building some important foundations for your university career. Communication is the main part of what you're going to be learning here. So you're going to take Arts 130 and Arts 140 in either order of fall and winter semester. These are going to be small classes, kind of like this, about 25 students. So you're going to have a lot of chances to talk to each other and to build community and to get to know your professor and to get a lot of chances to use your own voice. So it's going to give you some power, some agency, to find out that what you have to say matters, and to find out what kinds of power you have to make the things you want to say stronger and to make more of an impact on your audience in your writing and in your speaking, and in learning how to use visual communication as well. We're also going to talk a little bit today here about one of the other things that Arts First will do, which is to develop rhetorical awareness and knowledge. So I don't know if you know the word rhetoric. It's something we'll be focusing on a little bit later, which is learning how to make choices with your writing. Learning that your voice, your audience, the reason you're writing, the kind of writing or oral communication you choose is going to have to shift depending on what your ultimate purpose is, so that you can actually match your voice to be its strongest for the purpose that you have. You're going to get a lot of chances in Arts First to work with your peers. I'm hoping Ola can tell you in a moment what it was like coming to university and being in a small classroom where sometimes the prof simply ignored you and you had to talk and find your way around things with each other. And we also will be learning how to find, evaluate, and use information, especially in your Arts 140 class. So that's just a quick background to what Arts First is like. I'm just going to pass this over to Ola, and she'll tell you what it's like from a student perspective.
Hi guys, like I said, my name's Ola. I'm a second-year arts and business student. So after this, if any of you guys have any questions about the program or anything, you can come up to me. I took Arts 130 and Dr. Smythe's class last semester, and it was honestly one of my favorite classes in university. You'll find that a lot of times the classes are really big. You have like 200 to 400 students, and being in a 25-student class really helped me specifically to adjust. I came from a school where we were 20 people in the whole class, and so having a community and being able to talk to people and not just listen to a professor go on and on and on for an hour and a half was really, really helpful. Something that I found really special about Dr. Heather's class in particular was the theme. So the way that the Arts, I think, 130 classes do is with a theme, and hers was reconciliation, resistance, and resurgence. Thank you, which is very indigenous focused. I'm an international student. I came from Uganda, and not knowing any Canadian history, not knowing stuff like land claims, things like smudging, I didn't know any of that about residential schools. Thank you, sorry, I'm skipping stuff. The 60s scoop, any of that, I had no clue about it, and I learned so much being in this class, stuff that I use until this day, stuff that I go out there and actually do. Things like the research paper helped me a lot. If you're an art student, you're gonna write papers. You're gonna write so many papers, you're gonna get tired of them. you're gonna need to know how to research, you're gonna need to know how to use the Dana Porter library, and all that I learned in this class. It's so easy, and the best thing I think about the class is you're gonna have so many assignments in your other classes, while in Dr. Smith's class, it's more laid back. You can speak to her, you can talk to her, tell her, I don't really understand exactly how to do this. She's been very helpful in it. Things like exam, I believe. We didn't really have an exam, it's just a final portfolio. And you see your progress over the term, and you think in the beginning you wouldn't see it. Like at the beginning I was like, I'm just gonna like hand it in the way it is, you know. I'm not gonna wanna do anything to edit or whatever, but you really notice that you learn stuff. The peer reviews were really important, being able to see your work through other people's eyes, being able to see your work through a different lens at times, having to re-edit and edit again your papers, your compositions, was really, really helpful, not just in this class, but I used those skills that I learned in all my other classes. And finally, I think a very important thing I learned in this class was identity. So at the beginning of the class, you learn what you bring into the table, who you are, what perspective you speak from, and what perspective you want to learn. And you learn so much from the people around you. And you realize you have so many similar things with people you thought you didn't really have anything in common with, and how that, you know, is reflected in Indigenous people, is reflected in your work, is reflected even in how you speak with others, how you speak outside the class, how you speak to professors. It really does reflect on everything you do when you realize that this class does help you identify yourself and how you, I guess, what do you bring to the table? What do you bring to the class, and what do you bring to the university in general? And I, without a doubt, enjoyed this class. It was one of my favorites, and pretty like great result, you know, afterwards, if you know what I mean. It's a good A. So I would encourage you to do this. Does anybody have any questions? I'm pretty open, and sometimes I know I came to Arts 101 and I had questions, but I was too afraid to ask. So I can write my email on the board if you guys want to shoot me an email or a Facebook message about Arts 130 or about anything to do with arts and business or the university. Feel free to. I'm pretty open, pretty friendly, and I wouldn't mind you know, you reaching out, asking me any dumb question. No question is too stupid. So yeah, and I hope you guys have a great Arts 101 day, the rest of it. It's pretty hot though, so here you go.
Do you have any questions for Ola? Any? Okay, so a couple things we'll do before I break you into groups. Just thanks very much for that, Ola. She reminded me that a couple of things you might find unusual, but will be really, really important about these Arts First courses, is a lot of them will involve peer collaboration. Not just to talk, but actually to look at each other's writing and give feedback. So you'll find out that your peers are your first audience, and a lot of students, just like Ola was saying, they're really surprised to find what happens to their confidence about their writing and their ability to start to problem solve their own writing when that shift happens. So instead of coming into a class and thinking, I'm writing an essay for my professor, I have no idea what he or she wants, I have no idea if it has any value until I see a number at the end. Instead, you get a shift where you talk to your peers, they look at it and they go, wow, when I read this, I really understood because you used that word. Or when I read this, something's missing there, I didn't quite get it. And you start to take a little more ownership over your writing. And you realize you're not writing to get a grade, and you're not writing for a mysterious professor, you're writing for an audience. And that audience is going to keep changing all the time. I had a lot of students say at the end of the course, they actually felt like they jumped into the deep end to start, and they had no idea how confident and powerful they would feel by the end of the course. So that's one of the reasons why we've got you in these small groups right first from the very first term that you're getting into university, so that you can get that kind of power immediately and not spend 4 years struggling to figure it out. What do my profs want? I have no idea. No one's ever told me before. There's tons of feedback. Most of these courses will end with not an exam. You're not supposed to be memorizing information. You're supposed to be becoming a stronger writer, oral communicator, visual communicator over the course of a term. So you will look at your own writing. You're going to have lots of feedback. You get multiple chances to work on everything. You might, in my class, you might hand in an essay. First, your peers look at it, you revise it. You give it to me, I give you tons of comments, I give it back, you revise it again. And then you hand it in at the end of the course in a portfolio. So the focus is not on, if you take a risk and you don't do it right, that's it. Instead, it's take a risk, get some feedback, take more risks, make some more choices, and then you actually are very confident that you hand in your very best work at the end because you've had tons of chances to test those risks. And that's the kind of environment that we want to create for you in these courses. So we're going to move to an exercise here, and I just want to shift into the focus just a bit. Like Ola was saying, the course that I was teaching was on Indigenous resistance and politics and resurgence. And so that's going to be some of the focus for talking both about how do you get agency, but also how can writing give us power? How does communication give us power? How can we move people and make change by becoming the strongest possible voices, the strongest possible writers and speakers that we can be? Quick quotation that Ola may remember from when we had our course. Writing is writing, writing is rioting, writing is writing, on the best days, all three. So this is one possible focus, one possible theme for a course like this. You're learning how to write for all kinds of purposes, including for essays for your course, but the same skills you build as a writer in an academic environment are the skills you can use to actually make change in the communities that matter to you. So you can make your voice stronger as you go to try and make change in the world, not just in school. Or in school to change the world sometimes, as Ola has discovered, as already knew, I think. A couple of quick points about communication. You'll learn in these courses, it's not just about giving information to somebody, it's about a relationship with someone else. You're not going to make sense unless they understand you. And you have to figure out what does your audience need to make that happen. And it's never just what's said. There's always a context. There are things behind what people are saying and hearing that have to be understood and managed. And with, I hope, Ola's permission and her friends, a few of the things we'll talk about here today. Why are you writing? Why are you communicating? Who are you writing for, communicating with? And what is this writing or communication supposed to do? What's your audience? What's your purpose? And what context is surrounding this? This is a poster session that Ola and her group put together to take some of the research findings they did in my class, and they created a public poster and showed them in the library. And I think for a lot of students, this was a pretty like unusual kind of thing for a first-year university to actually be out there in the public with your research, talking about things you've learned and things you want to say. So you're going to get a lot of chances for building your own agency and having a voice in a class like this. So first things first, if you can grab a piece of paper, and then there's lots of paper here, we'd like to have you make a name tag, because we want you to learn each other's names, because you're going to be going to lunch after this, and it's great if you actually know some people you can talk to. Oh, you've already got them? Okay. Well, sure, we'll do this anyway. And then I want you to break up into groups of 3 or 4, and sort of set yourselves up so that you can face each other and have a conversation. Great. My favorite thing is to make it into a kind of a 3-sided pyramid so it stands up, and that way we can actually address you by name too. Now there's a lot of information on this handout. This is really just a taste. I know we haven't got much time. This is just to get a taste of what it might be like to work in a classroom like this. I'm also going to pass around, with your permission, these video consent forms, because as you've noticed, there's a videographer at the back.
Hi.
And this is the classroom they chose to videotape. So if you can sign your name on this and leave it with us at the end, thank you. So what's going on with this handout is this is just a bunch of excerpts of visual and written texts all the same kind of theme, which is Indigenous resistance and political organizing. 2 of them refer specifically to the Oka crisis of 1990. 2 of them are literary texts. One is Maria Campbell, a Métis writer, and it's set in the 1960s. And the other one is Sherry Demolane's Marrow Thieves, also a Métis writer. And she was second place in the Canada Reads Prize this year. And it's a science fiction text set in the future. So, what I'm asking you to do is to get into your groups, and really physically get up and move into groups of 3 or 4. And you're going to do some brainstorming around these questions. Given that we have pretty much the same kind of topic here, how can these pictures and written words be addressing the same kind of topic in different ways? What kinds of observations can you make about what kind of choices the writers might have made about their language use? How is the comic book image different from a photographic image? What can you guess about what the purpose might be of each of these forms of written or visual communication? And sometimes this is about kind of working backwards from what's the result, what's the impact on you, and can you find ways in which the writer might have been trying to do that? Okay, so grab your groups, and we want to hear a lot of noise, because that's a big thing about the Arts First classes. It's about talking with each other. Let's do that for 10, 15 minutes and see how much time you want to have. Did you see the thing? And since this isn't real homework, this is just for fun. You don't have to reread thoroughly and get everything. Just dive in anywhere. It's just a chance to get a few thoughts, a few brainstorming ideas. You're just getting the feel of how this kind of environment works.
Also a good time to make friends on Arts 101 Day. I'm still friends with some of them who I met in the Arts 101 Well, not really. I mean, essentially,
We can see the same thing for there's a ton of like additions to like Britain invades like half the world. And it's still on like
There's a lot more description. There's a question I heard. And the question is actually very connected to especially since I'm not a lady.
Compel you to be
not indigenous students. There's also how we learn. Don't let them.
So that you don't have that.
I'm going to step into the social life and forget that you have fingers to eat. You might, you end up like stressing and like I don't know that so many times. So I learned from my mistakes. So yeah, just hey guys. I guess maybe the video ones.
Let's join the big group again. Okay, so are there any groups that want to get started with one observation or idea or thought or question that they had? Yeah, Christine? Oh, sorry. Oh, wrong one. Oh, Abigail.
So one thing that we noticed was when looking at the comic, it was really like a general overall synopsis of this event. But if you look at the back, it was more of a person's personal story. So I find that this one's better for understanding the event and what actually happened, but to connect with it more, the essay was much more.
Okay. Okay. And can you think of any examples, like any words they chose, anything they did that made that impact happen for you? Or Andrew, a
For
different one?
me, it was the main thing was the photograph versus the drawing of the soldier and the Mohawk staring each other down. Because the photograph is very intense and very much like you can see exactly how they feel, whereas the comic seems much more like not, you can't really get the same emotions out of it because they're all very played down without too much intensity in it at all.
Okay.
Anyone
Okay.
else?
Caroline.
Like an example of the overall versus the personal. The essay was in first person, which means that like someone was talking about their own experiences, whereas the comic was formal and more factual.
Okay. Just as an aside, one thing you'll probably get in some of your Arts First classes, and I know the one that at Olatech is like this, is what I often do is start with something that's more personal and narrative. So you don't have to go doing research and learning something you don't know. You write about yourself. It helps you figure out who you are and what your position is, but also what your writing voice is, and you get lots of creative license. The next essay might be more research-based or a proposal or something more formal. And my purpose of doing that is so you can actually take skills of trying to create emotional intensity, trying to create a personal bond with your audience. And when you learn what those work, how they work in a creative environment, then you can pull that into a more formal essay. You can actually kind of play with the levels of formality of your writing in ways you might not have realized you can. It's like getting a toolbox of different skills. And you can sometimes take the skills from one form of writing and pull them into a different form of writing to have more impact once you realize what can happen there. This can be, as Andrew was saying, with visuality, you can find out what visual communication methods are most likely to either give plain facts or to give emotional intensity. How do I make that choice? Any other ideas? Any questions or concerns or comments about the work as well? Sasha?
It was an idea.
Okay, great.
We sort of came to a consensus that like the two pieces of writing that were in here, the one was a lot more descriptive and like graphic than the second one, and the second one was more about like the relationships like affected during the crisis and like sort of personal development.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so I didn't give you any background really to what those two pieces were about, but I know that Mattia was also asking this question as well. What's going on in those two pieces is the first one, the Marrow Thieves, is you have very truly creative writing. And so you get things like an image, like the image of the marrow and the bones and the crowded sky and the broken ground. A writer can actually plant an image or a word and put a ton of meaning into it and let that roll out over the course of their writing. And so when you see it again, it's saying more than it actually looks like it's saying. And that's a skill you can actually do in your more formal writing as well. You can plant an image, load some meaning into it, repeat that word, make it like a transition in a formal essay, for instance, and your writer actually takes more out of it, including emotional or persuasive content, than it might look like it has at first. So that's what's going on, as Sasha's saying, with that one example. It's very creative. It's very imagery laden. And the other example from Maria Campbell, it's a memoir. It's a little more kind of, I am speaking to you very plainly. I'm telling you about my family. I'm telling you about growing up. It's got a different kind of a voice, a different kind of a tone, which might actually work better than the very creative imagery-laden work, depending on your purpose. If you really want to sort of grab someone and say, listen to me, I'm talking to you, maybe you want to use a different kind of a voice. So these are important observations, that you can say the same thing, talk about the same topic with all kinds of different nuances to have more power. Other ideas, including Ola.
Right, so I think the first paragraph from Half-Breed was, when I was reading the book in class, one of my favorites, just about how a lot of, like what I said to a couple of people, a lot of what I enjoyed about this class is the reflection of what you studied in class to real life. Around the time we were doing it, there was, the American elections and like all that. And I'm a political science student, so I like politics and stuff. And she's talking about how minorities always like talking about white politicians and supporting them, but when it comes to putting our own voices up there, it doesn't really happen. We don't get a lot of support. So it was like, wow, like this is something that was happening in the 60s, and this is something that's still happening in 2000. So it reflects a lot, and you go back reflecting a lot on the class and on how that affects you. And like she said, the first creative piece you write is about yourself. So you think a lot about identity, you think a lot about where your writing is coming from and why you write the way you write and why you think of this topic and you think this way before thinking of how somebody else could have written it. And when you read other people's pieces, you're like, oh, I didn't know this about you. That's so cool. I went through that too. And you end up making friends. I made a lot of friends in your class. So, yeah.
Well, you were going to say too, you made a friend at Arts 101, right?
Yeah, I made a friend at Arts 101. Actually, she's the person who came with me here a year later. She drove me here. So the people you meet today and during orientation and people like, if you live in residence, the people you'll be living with in residence, things like that, you really do make connections with them. I'm living with some of them this coming year. So, you know, it's all fun. It's great. It's a great time. Like I said, I'm very friendly, so reach out if you need anything. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Well, we've got a couple of more minutes if you want to ask Ola or me any more questions, or if you have more things that your group discussed that you really want to say about the writing today. Any questions about university experience, about Arts First?
This is your chance.
Yeah. Yeah, Zoe.
Do you know if there's a time like we get to like meet other people on our program?
Today?
Like not just like arts general.
I think Erin behind you is one of the organizers. She might know.
So after lunch, you're actually going to do program-specific sessions, and that will be everyone who is from your program, and you're going to meet with your advisor for that program as well. You'll learn a little bit more, and then you'll have time to meet with other folks as well. Yeah, you're welcome.
And there's one there?
Yeah, from talking to other or like previous university students, I heard that like the first year is almost the most boring in comparison to other years. Is that true?
Boring in what way? Like socially or like academically?
Academically.
Yeah. That's pretty true.
I was going to say no.
The truth is, it can be boring in the sense that everybody's in your classes. So if you're an ARBIS student, you're all going to do ARBIS 101. And you're going to meet almost every single ARBIS student. So there's 250 of you in one class, and you're all learning the same thing. There's nothing like very deep about it. When you get into, I don't even think, it's just the first semester, and you're also getting used to university and all that good stuff. You know, you're getting used to living away from home and that stuff. So you're like, you know, that's a lot other stuff, you know. But once you get into like your second semester, you're more into your major. You're more like studying the thing that you came to study, or at least you're finding your way. You're finding more interesting things. You're joining things like clubs. It really does help in your academics as well, just because you're more interested in what you're doing. So, yeah, first semester can be not boring, but it might not be what you imagine in your head. It might not be like the excitement of university. You're like, oh, I thought it'd be like High School Musical University version, you know? But it's not. And then it becomes High School Musical in second semester. Any other questions? I have a lot of Vine references I can use. Yes.
How did you end up teaching like this course?
Good question. I think for 2 years now, I've been associate director of the program. So we developed it from the beginning. We decided what was going to be what were the student outcomes going to be, what did the classes have to look like, and we did the hiring, and we did figuring out what kinds of classroom activities could work. So that's why I taught one. It was a pilot course. There were 5 of them that were launched before this fall, and that's why I'm here.
What do you think is like the most important part of this course?
Oh, the most important part of this course. Okay. I'd say, I'm going to slightly twist that. The most important thing you can do to make this the most important course of your term or of your first year is to remember that you are in the driver's seat, and it's not about, oh my goodness, this looks so easy, I'm just going to sit back and like nothing's being requested of me. It's only going to work if you challenge yourself. So every student that comes into a class like this, I think of it as like a personal best with a race. Like if you come in and you're a really, really great runner, or you believe you are a great writer, don't go, okay, forget it, I'm just going to sit back. Because most of them are actually, your grade is going to reflect your progress and your effort as well. So you say, here I am now, I know I can be better, and I'm going to take everything this class can give me to get to over here, and that's my personal best goal. So that means you have to be in it, stay in the moment of the writing, take all the tools that your prof gives you. I know what happened today may look like just, wow, is that what it's always going to be like? What would happen in a proper Arts First course is you would have some readings to learn some basics. You would do that kind of a group work thing. We would do some more things on the board. Your prof would give you some more language and terminology to explain and describe and deepen the stuff that you just figured out that you already knew. Take that another step further, show you how you can bring it into your own writing, tie it to some other thing that comes up a few days later. So it is actually going to be more challenging than it might look from what happened today, but it's you who actually gets to set that challenge for yourself and where you want to get to with the course. Any other questions? Okay, have a great time at lunch and have a great day. And like Ola was saying, learn each other's names because you may actually remember each other from this classroom years from now.
You will find